Have you ever sat down to study and 5 minutes later, you're already checking your phone? You open the book, read the same paragraph 3 times, and nothing sticks. You try to focus, but your brain just isn't listening. You know you need to study, you just can't bring yourself to do it. And even when you finally manage to concentrate, you feel like you're learning in slow motion. Meanwhile, other people seem to learn so much faster. They barely study and still remember everything. They watch one video and already understand. They take notes once and ace the exam. And you start to wonder, are they just smarter than me? But what if that's not it? What if the real reason you feel stuck isn't your intelligence, but your method? And what if learning faster, like ridiculously faster, had nothing to do with how hard you work and everything to do with how your brain actually learns? By the end of this video, you'll see exactly why your old way of studying hasn't worked and what to do instead. It's simple, it's practical, and once it clicks, it might feel a little unfair.
Let's go back for a second. Think about how you were taught to study. In school, at home, online. What did they say? Read the textbook. Take notes. Highlight important stuff. Review everything before the test. Maybe throw in some flashcards if you're feeling ambitious. But here's the thing. That method doesn't work for 90% of people. And not because you're doing it wrong, but because the method itself is broken. Let me explain. Reading and highlighting are passive learning. They feel productive, but they don't create long-term memory. It's like watching someone else do push-ups and expecting your arms to get stronger. Your brain doesn't grow from watching. It grows from doing. So when you read a chapter and say, "Okay, I get it," what you're actually saying is, "This feels familiar." But familiarity does not equal understanding, and understanding does not equal memory. That's why so many people study for hours and forget everything a week later. They're learning backwards. They're doing the easiest part first and skipping the part that actually works. So what works? Let's flip it around. Let's stop trying to review information and start learning how to recall it.
Your brain has one goal when it comes to learning. What do I need to remember, and what can I forget? It's ruthless. If something feels unimportant, your brain tosses it. If it feels urgent, emotional, or useful, your brain keeps it. That's the first principle of real learning. Relevance equals retention. But there's something even more powerful. It's called retrieval, and it's the reason why testing yourself, even if you get it wrong, is more effective than reviewing perfectly. Here's how it works. When you try to recall something from memory, your brain strengthens that connection. Even if you fail, even if you can't remember it at all, the act of trying sends a signal. Hey, this matters. Let's keep it. It's called the testing effect, and it's one of the most well-researched tools for long-term learning. But hardly anyone uses it. Why? Because retrieval feels uncomfortable. It exposes what you don't know. It makes you feel behind. But discomfort is not a problem. It's a signal that your brain is learning. No struggle equals no growth. So here's a shift. Next time you study, don't ask, "Did I read everything?" Ask, "Can I recall it without looking?" That's how real learning happens. Not in silence and highlighting, but in struggle and retrieval.
There are two kinds of learners: consumers, who passively take in information; builders, who create with what they learn. Most people consume. They watch tutorials, take pretty notes, buy new highlighters, feel busy, feel tired, and then
Forget it all.
Because consuming feels productive, but your brain doesn't remember what you don't use. Builders do it differently. They turn what they learn into action, even tiny ones. Here's what that looks like. After a study session, record yourself explaining the topic. Draw a diagram from memory. Teach someone, even if it's your pet. Write a tweet-sized summary of the concept. Answer a practice question before you feel ready. This forces your brain to reorganize the info, to turn it from input into output. And that's where the magic happens. The truth is, you don't remember what you consume. You remember what you create. So stop acting like a student. Start acting like a teacher, even if you're just teaching yourself.
Let's talk about time. Most people think learning faster means studying longer, but that's wrong. Your brain doesn't learn well in long, tiring sessions. It learns in short, focused sprints. Here's the method. Step 1, pick one topic, just one. Step 2, set a timer for 25 to 30 minutes. Step 3, go deep. No phone, no tabs, no distractions. Step 4, when the timer ends, take a 5-minute break. Step 5, do a quick recall. What did I just learn? That's it. One sprint equals more progress than 2 hours of distracted studying. Why? Because your brain rewards intense focus, not long sessions. It's the quality of your attention, not the quantity of your time. And here's the best part. Anyone can focus for 25 minutes. No excuses. Even if your day is packed. Even if you're tired. Even if you don't feel motivated. One sprint. That's all it takes to move forward. And once you start seeing results from shorter sessions, you'll never go back.
Here's something nobody tells you. Most people study too much and learn too little. Sounds wrong, right? But let me explain. We assume that the more time we spend, the more we retain. So we reread everything. We rewrite notes. We try to cover all the content. But in doing that, we make a huge mistake. We treat all information as equal. And it's not. Some things you learn will matter a lot. Others barely show up in your exam or your life. So the key isn't to study everything. It's to study the right things. This is called the 80-20 rule of learning. 80% of your results come from 20% of what you study. There are core concepts in every subject, ideas that unlock everything else, like finding the one gear that moves the whole machine. If you spend time mastering those key ideas, everything else becomes easier to learn or even unnecessary. But if you treat everything equally, you'll be overwhelmed, tired, frustrated, and worst of all, you'll forget it. So how do you find that 20%? Start here. Look at past exams. What shows up every year? Ask yourself, if I could only study one thing today, what would make the biggest difference? Identify your weaknesses, not your strengths. Remember, revising what you already know feels good, but it doesn't move you forward. Want to learn faster? Stop being busy. Start being ruthless.
Ever notice how if you give yourself a whole day to study, you somehow still need the whole day, even if the task could be done in 1 hour? That's not laziness. It's a law. Parkinson's law. Work expands to fill the time available for its completion. In other words, if you say, "I'll study all afternoon," you'll take all afternoon. But if you say, "I have 1 hour to finish this," your brain compresses the task. You become sharper, faster, more decisive. You stop wasting time warming up. You stop checking your phone. You stop second-guessing, because the limit creates focus. So here's a simple rule. Never study without a timer. Even if it's just for 15 minutes. Make time visible. Make it count. Because the truth is,
You don't need more time to study. You need to treat the time you have like it's precious, because it is.
Let's talk about motivation. You watch a video like this, and you feel inspired. You're ready to change everything. But what happens tomorrow morning? That feeling is gone. And it's not your fault. Motivation is an emotion. It comes and goes. If you rely on it, you'll always be stuck. So what do top learners rely on instead? Systems. Systems don't care how you feel. They just run every day, over and over. Think of a system like this. You study at the same time every day, in the same spot, with the same tools, for the same amount of time, using the same method. It sounds boring, but it's powerful because it removes decision fatigue. It turns learning into a routine, not a battle. And that's what makes consistency possible. Not willpower, design. So if you're tired of falling off track, stop trying to be more motivated. Start building a system that makes studying automatic.
If you want to learn fast, like unfairly fast, there's one trick that works every time. Teach what you learn. Right after you finish a topic, don't move on. Stop. And pretend you're the teacher. Say it out loud. Draw it. Explain it like the person listening has never heard it before. Why? Because when you teach, your brain does something incredible. It organizes the mess. It simplifies the complex. It filters out the noise and keeps only what matters. And in that process, you remember it. Better than any note, better than any rereading. You don't need an audience. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to output. Because input alone doesn't create memory. Only expression does. So from now on, before you move on, ask, could I explain this to someone else? If not, you haven't learned it yet.
Most people think learning faster means adding more. More books, more videos, more techniques, more apps, more hours. But learning faster isn't about addition. It's about subtraction.
You don't need more tools. You need fewer distractions. Let me explain. Imagine your brain is like a whiteboard. Every time you switch tasks, answer a message, open a new tab, check your notifications, you scribble over it, and then you try to write something important on top of all that noise. Of course it doesn't stick. Of course it feels foggy, because there's no space left to think. Learning fast requires mental clarity, and clarity comes from removing friction. Start here. Turn your phone on airplane mode when studying. Use noise-canceling headphones or silence. Clear your desk, just the essentials. Know exactly what you're learning before you begin. Less chaos outside means more focus inside. It's not glamorous, but it's a game changer. Every distraction you remove is a little act of rebellion against a world that wants your attention. And every minute of focus you protect is a vote for your future self. Want to learn faster? Make space for your mind to breathe. Here's something almost nobody talks about. If you want to remember more, faster, stop keeping your learning private. Learn in public. Not in a performative way, not to look smart, but to force clarity. When you post an insight, explain an idea to a friend, write a thread, make a video, summarize a book, you're not just sharing. You're strengthening your memory. You're taking what's vague and making it sharp. You're taking a thought and turning it into language. And that's what burns it into your brain. Here's what's wild. You'll often understand a concept better after sharing it than you did when you first studied it, because now it has structure. It lives in the real world, not just in your head. So try this. After you study, post your key takeaway, one sentence. Text a friend and explain the concept you just learned. Start a simple blog, even if no one reads it.
Make voice notes talking through your ideas. You don't have to be an expert. You just have to start putting things out there. Because the brain remembers what it has to defend. And when you speak your learning into the world, it sticks.
Let's talk about the part nobody sees. The quiet, invisible space between input and output. The moment where learning doesn't feel exciting anymore. Where progress feels flat. No big breakthroughs. No aha moments. Just silence. That's when most people give up. They say, I'm not making progress. This isn't working. I must be doing something wrong. But here's the truth. This is the part where real learning happens. It's not fast. It's not loud. It's not exciting, but it's real. It's the moment your brain begins to shift from consuming to owning, from scattered to structured, from short-term memory to long-term mastery. But it only happens if you stay with it, if you don't abandon the process just because it got quiet. Because growth isn't always visible. Sometimes it's underground, like roots forming before a tree ever breaks the surface. So next time you feel stuck, don't stop. You're not failing, you're settling in. And just on the other side of that silence is clarity.
Let me ask you something. When you think about yourself, do you think I'm trying to learn faster or I'm someone who learns fast? That difference may seem small, but it changes everything because your brain wants your actions to match your identity. If you say, I'm a fast learner, your brain starts to build evidence to support that. Every study session becomes a vote. Every recall. Every practice question. Every 30-minute sprint. Even the failed attempts. Even the days you struggle. They all count because they reinforce the story you're telling yourself. This is who I am now. You're not waiting for results to give you permission. You're acting like the person you want to become and letting the identity grow from there. Learning fast isn't just about techniques. It's about becoming someone who doesn't need to relearn the same lesson 10 times. Someone who values time. Someone who owns their process. And the beautiful part? It starts small. One focused session. One hard recall. One moment of clarity. And then another. And another. Until one day, you look back and realize you're not trying anymore. You've changed.
Let's zoom out. Here is what you now understand. Your brain learns best through recall, not repetition. Emotion and relevance turn information into memory. Creating greater than consuming. Short, focused sprints beat long, distracted marathons. Teaching locks it in. Environment shapes behavior. Identity drives everything. This isn't about studying harder, or longer, or more perfectly. It's about aligning your method with how the brain actually works. You don't need more hours. You don't need more notebooks. You don't need to burn out. You just need a system that respects your biology. And now, you have it. The people who learn the fastest aren't born different. They just stopped doing what doesn't work. They stopped cramming, stopped rereading, stopped pretending that time equals progress. They learned to study less and learn more. They made it feel so fast, so easy, so effective. It almost looked unfair. But now you know, it's not unfair. It's just aligned. And when you study like this, you don't just pass exams. You become the kind of person who can learn anything, fast, for life, without burning out.